Welcome to the Antiochian Podcast, a podcast accompaniment to the Antiochian magazine produced by Antioch College and the Antioch College Alumni Association. Hi, thanks for joining us on the Antiochian for the summer edition. I'm here with Chris Westhoff, who's the director of the Foundry Theater at Antioch. And today we're going to talk about this learning hub, what's been going on, and how things are progressing into the future. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. I've heard a lot of good things and actually caught at least one show at the Foundry this last season. It was amazing. Was glad to be there with the Irish band. It was in town. Great vibe. A lot of cool stuff that's happening. So first, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to the alums out there. What makes you tick? Why did you join Antioch? A little bit about that, and then we can dig into some other things about the Foundry.
Sounds good. Thanks, and glad you could catch Lunasa. Totally. Those guys are great. I think Kevin Crawford deserves an award for best MC of a folk band ever in history. He's an amazing fellow.
Yeah, that was great.
It's been fun to get to know those guys over the years because it's always a hoot. And yeah, I am really glad to be living in Yellow Springs now. I've just been here for a couple few years. I grew up in New England and I went to Hampshire College, which, as many of your listeners surely know, uh, based a lot of its identity on what Antioch College is. It strove to be a college in the early 60s, and it studied what was working at other liberal arts colleges that were operating independently and had a sort of unique approach to education. And that's what Hampshire embodies. And I have uh, dabbled in a lot of things. I've worked in some museums. My first job out of college was actually at a really awesome place in northwestern Massachusetts called Mass MoCA. And I fell in love with the industrial vibe. I had a warehouse studio in Western Massachusetts where I made music and films and presented concerts from, bands that we surely thought were amazing when we were 23 and likely um, didn't perform again, but we had those evenings together. Something about being in the Foundry is very familiar to my coming of age in the mill towns of Western Massachusetts. I lived in Ann Arbor for a while. I worked at the University of Michigan in their art museum as an art handler and installer. And then I started touring with a theater company. I've played music for most of my life. I used to hang out on a spray foam insulation company, worst job ever. And I've mixed it up. And before moving to Yellow Springs, I was living in Bell Fountain, which is about an hour north of the village.
Mhm.
Um, Western Ohio. Folks may know about Bell Fountain in Logan County because was so privileged, and I hope you can feel and hear and see and sense all of my deep sarcasm when I say that I had Jim Jordan as my congressional representative for so many years. And then when I found myself in a position of, uh, community leadership in Bell Fountain, running a historic theater and being a civic member of things and, going to meetings where Jim Jordan also was, I realized it was time to leave. And our children were just born, and COVID was just on the edge of things, and it was just time to go. And a job opening happened in Yellow Springs at the Antioch School, which also, of course, has its roots and foundations with Antioch College. Antioch School being the oldest Democratic elementary school in the country. It was founded in 1921 by Arthur Morgan, right next to the college campus on the golf course. A development position opened up there, part-time job. And I kind of thought, well, that will get us started and we'll see what happens next. I rented the Foundry Theater to host a fundraising event for the Antioch School. I liked the room so much. I knocked on the door of the president's office and I said, hey, what about trying this thing out? And I showed him a plan that I'd kicked up from my work in Bellefontaine. It's kind of like a three-pronged approach to activating the theater space that brings in touring shows that create an identity and traffic and revenue, having artist and resident companies that are in-house activating the space, using the facility and paying an annual due. And through those two efforts, increasing the rental foot traffic where people that just want to have a show or a party or a gathering of some kind could use the space for that. And so basically, the work that we're doing has something to do with bringing those three approaches to activating the space. And we've just completed our second season under that model. And I'm glad to tell you and your listeners that things are going well.
Yeah, no, I've heard amazing things about the whole season. The crowds there, the folks coming in from the community, super encouraging because that's definitely one of the things that Antioch needs to do is re-engage with the Yellow Springs community since there's been long historic ties there, but maybe afraid just because there wasn't much going on at the college for the community to do. So that's amazing stuff. And as you're telling your kind of story there, because a lot of parallels. I studied media, did a lot of theater work after Antioch for a while before I went into technology. Maybe an unfortunate choice, but my kids went to the Antioch school. I was back in Yellow Springs for a bit, so you know, love all that stuff. But mostly love the fact that you found your way to Antioch and you knocked on the door, right? You came to us because you saw an opportunity there, and it's great to have that kind of energy behind what's happening at the Foundry and really re-engaging with the community. Maybe some highlights from the last season that you saw.
Sure. Well, I love that you were able to catch the Lunasa show, and that was great. Those guys are fabulous. It wasn't long after their show that we hosted a band called Yachody, which comes from the Ukraine, and they were on their first North American tour. And it was a very powerful concert. Of course, elevated, amplified, however you might say it, by the ongoing war that they're going through. Um, and it's a female vocal ensemble that digs really deep into their cultural tradition of folk music and reinterprets folk ballads and stories in a really cool, driving, progressive way. That was a fabulous show. One of the things that was really touching about it as it got closer and closer to the date, and we were wondering, is their tour actually going to be able to happen, and how's this going? Um, the men that formed the band behind the four singers weren't actually able to leave the country, and what they had to do is they had to find expats. They had to find Ukrainians living in the States to put together a band for that tour. Um, I think it was a moment for all of us in the audience because they told that story as part of the program and who they were and why so and so wasn't here and who was at home, etc. Where um, the reality of things resonated in a new way, and it was significant. Um, that was a very powerful night. Um, we just closed the season with a sold out show with Iris Dement, which was very cool. Um, she arrived with a very nice trio, and they were understandably skeptical. Where are we? Where, why are we here? Who are you? These kinds of things. She looked in the parking lot, which, as you can probably recall, and maybe your listeners like, well, where are people going to come? And if they do, where are they going to park? Like I said, well, they'll just park in the grass or whatever. They'll figure it out. And so the takeaway from there was she had a lovely time. She was really um, loving the vibe. She loved the people. Some community friends had dropped off gifts for her because they were so enamored with her work. You know, when you deal with somebody like Iris DeMent, who has been on the road for decades, uh, you know, you're rubbing elbows with a lot of people, right? So um, that was cool that I loved that she liked it so much. And she said, "How many people are in this town?" You know, and I told her, like, not
Most of
four
them are
thousand.
here.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of them are here. Um, they just couldn't believe it. So that was very cool. How about one more? Um, in the fall, we were able to host the Yellow Springs Film Festival again, and that will be coming up this October. Um, and that's a really groovy hang. The wonderful programming gets brought to town. I'm really glad that our steps were totally in line. I remember being at my friend's house, hanging out in the patio. There were 4 or 5 of us. We were having a whiskey. We were talking about what do we want to do? What are our dreams? And I was saying, well, I just threw this party at the Foundry, and I would like to see if I could maybe figure out how to, like, activate the Foundry or program it or do something there. And my buddy Eric said, well, I really want to start a film festival. And so it all just sort of happened in step with one another. And so here we were a couple years later, and we had done the day's work, and uh, we were hanging out after the show with Jim Jarmusch on the little stage of the experimental, just like looking around the room and thinking, well, everybody's gone. Should we go to bed? And somebody said, well, not yet. And so, the film festival is a cool aspect of what we're able to do.
Yeah, no, it's when you bring lots of different elements of the community together, it's amazing what can happen in that kind of environment. And also hopefully that kind of translates to the students as well, right? So they're seeing that kind of entrepreneurial, go get attitude type. Hey, it's you can put things together if you work together on stuff. It's super exciting to see
Yeah.
that. I'm sure that your former congressman didn't come down for any of those events, but it's amazing, to also tie in the political there, which is so Antioch, right? With Justin, bringing in the folks from Ukraine. It's a music festival, but you're also kind of making a statement with that, and it's amazing that the community was super supportive of that. I wish it could have been probably at every show. I mean, Iris DeMent was my father's probably favorite singer
Mm.
when he was alive. So, a really amazing set of things that really cross the line between what students might be interested in, what the community's interested in, pulling all that stuff together. The film festival, also amazing as a filmmaker from Antioch back in the day. Super great stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
What?
You did mention about the former congressman, and that reminds me of another highlight, which is when we were able to host a gathering and benefit with Sherrod Brown. And, we got all the people in the door and got everybody situated. And then, like clockwork, he showed up, 40 minutes later, and he had his help and his service and brought him in. And he was being introduced by his wife, and we're making small talk. And I said, you'll remember that Coretta Scott went to Antioch. And he goes, oh, thanks so much for reminding me. That's exactly what I was trying to remember. Who was it? And he went, and he just loved it, and the people loved him, and it was like a really meaningful afternoon.
That's
And of
amazing.
course, he didn't get he didn't get to do it this year. But you're talking about a real public servant, and somebody that sees things and cares about things. And it was humbling to have him in the room that day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, hopefully he's back in the picture in some form or fashion at some point soon. Could
Yeah,
definitely use more voices like that right now
no doubt.
for everybody. Yeah, so it's been amazing. I mean, we've heard great stuff. Both, as a trustee, I hear amazing things, about what's happening internally. The community's loving it. Students are engaged. But what could make things better, Chris? What could you do? Where could things go from here?
We are dealing with a very humble facility, and there's a lot of charm and vibe in that. But there's not a lot of charm or vibe in, a leaky roof or a heating and cooling system that isn't functioning. Um, and it's not always like that. And I've noticed, Mark, um, the roof only leaks when it's raining. So, there's a lot of times where
Funny how that
it's
works.
perfectly good. Um, and we're dealing with very minimal technical aspects, right, to our plan, like the lighting grid that we currently have. I brought in a friend who is a light tech to just see what upgrades we might be able to make and like how we can piecemeal a system together and move forward. He described our lighting system as older than the dinosaurs. Um, and
That's
I
very
asked,
familiar to me when I was there last. I was like,
yeah,
oh, I know how to work this stuff.
exactly. Yeah, I said, well, let's say we're able to make an investment or somebody came along and wanted to help us do that. What would we do with the current system and elements? And he goes, oh, I think that would be well suited for the scrapyard. So I don't think that people want, like, these are like the lighting system maybe came from a retired high school gymnasium or something. I don't know. Um, Times change. So it's all with due respect, not knocking anything. Um, so we have pretty limited technical resources, and we have a facility that definitely needs some, love and maintenance and overhaul. And uh,
In that vein, and I'll just throw this out of the blue,
please.
so take it as a curveball. But what about the amphitheater?
Oh yeah, so I would love to see the amphitheater up and running. It is um, not structurally sound at this point, the bleachers. So it's a big it's kind of like a it's not like a wound, it's not like a cut, it's not like stitches, it's more like a bruise, I feel. I feel like it's this thing that's there and people see it all the time. And it's not necessarily that they want to be in there, but the fact that they can't and the fact that it's not a part of the thing is a weakness. It's like, I think it's holding us up. And I would love to be able to program in it, especially if you think about, the spring and summer months and you have the inside available, the main stage, if you need a rain plan, but you can do this and like the kind of, bringing back something like the Blues Festival to the village would be, really obvious, meaningful thing to do. Putting on outdoor theater in the amphitheater again, not to mention, what you could do with some pretty fun, groovy rock and roll shows out there. I would love it. So it's not really at the top of the list.
No,
And of course, my list as a 1099 contractor, right? I'm not an employee of the college. I'm not faculty. I'm not even staff. You know, I'm an outlier. Uh, Although they like me, that's
they
nice.
do like you.
I feel appreciated. But yeah, so those are definitely some things I would put on the list.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think there are a number of alums that would love to help out in the way. A lot of theater folks and others over the years that have a fond place in their heart for Foundry and theater at Antioch. A lot of good traditions there, from bread and puppets all the way on through other stuff. So
Totally.
huge group of folks that would be interested in
Yeah, one
having.
of the things that we've been able to do is do like a season supporter ticket package, and so that's been helpful. It puts some cash up front, and then people can just know that they have tickets to shows, and I make sort of like uh, a secured seating, right? Like reserved seating. Everything's general admission at the Foundry. 'Cause we don't have that we don't have any kind of like proper seating chart or anything, but I can put reserved signs on certain seats so people know that they can come just at showtime but still sit, somewhere up front where they want to. And they've preloaded the season and they've helped us launch with some cash. Um, we're going to continue to offer those, but advancement is also getting involved this year. They're seeing the successes of what the Foundry is able to do, and there will be a an earnest campaign from advancement in terms of supporting the Foundry's activities, and that's going to be launched in the next month or so.
Okay, that's really good to hear. And I know that the Foundry, for the alums that don't know, is one of the learning hubs at the college.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
just talk a
correct.
little bit about how that fits into the things that curriculum at Antioch?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's a defined thing and there's this concept and vision of what a learning hub is, but it's also aspirational in the sense that um, you know, build it and find out who comes. And so that's what the college is working on, this learning hub model that gives a entrepreneurial, outward facing, revenue generating aspect to distinct activities, mostly located. They're like each learning hub has a location attached to it, like the Wellness Center, like the farm, like the Coretta Scott King Center. And so the Foundry is one of those. I believe there are 7 hubs, and you know, I'm largely operating independently of the others, and I think that's because physically the Foundry is just that much removed from campus. Our operations are unique. There are classes coming back to the Foundry, which is great, being taught, but there's less student activity at the Foundry than there is elsewhere. Um, and, not being an employee of the college, it just sort of, I think it creates some natural separation. But there are student jobs at the Foundry, and I've been working with student workers throughout the course of these first couple of years and have had meaningful interactions with them. Um, it's the range of stuff between setting up for an event, mopping a floor, versus greeting an artist, moving equipment, running lights, and sometimes sound. So it's a range of things, and I do hope and intend for that to not just continue but increase.
That's awesome. And I know, you know, you have to start somewhere, right? So there haven't been as many student interactions, but the program's off to a great start. It's really bringing in the community. It's kind of the poster child of the learning hubs, along with the Credit Scott King Center, in terms of bringing in community support in different ways. So everything I've heard is really great stuff, Chris. I know that in addition to kind of the physical resources that are needed in a lot of places in Antioch, especially the Foundry, maybe some connections could help
Mhm.
too amongst the alums.
I love that idea. I'm working with um, you know, agents and rosters and management companies and artists that I know. And they oftentimes lead to a new entity that I didn't know before, but because I knew so and so, then you have a conversation here. It just happened last week. I was talking to a friend that runs a music festival uh, that Indiana University in Bloomington produces called the Lotus Festival. And it's very familiar to me, and a lot of my programming ideas actually stem from what Lotus has been doing over the years in terms of the vibrancy and the progressive nature that can be in like folk music when it's youthful, when it's global, when it's um, forward searching in a way that most of the acts that we're bringing to town is. That's the kind of stuff that ends up at something like Lotus World Music Festival or Global Kirky, which is like the major global music festival that happens in Albuquerque every other year. So I was talking to my friend tomorrow who runs Lotus Music Festival, and she tells me who's routing to her, and she introduces it to me. And through that, I end up with this awesome booking that's coming on September 24th. I couldn't be more excited about it. This is somebody I don't know anything about, but because of Tamara, I learned about this roster and talking to this roster. I learned about this major cumbia artist from Bogota, and people are going to love it. And it's like little that we get to hear. Um, so I can imagine what you're getting at, Mark, being that Antiochians uh, live all over the world. They know people all over the world, and they have friends and community that make music, that make art, that are in theater, that have produced films, that have done all sorts of things that we would love to present. And I'm very much an open door to those kinds of ideas and conversations.
That's awesome. Yeah, and there are definitely a lot of folks that know people that I think, if we get together as alums, we can suggest folks, whether it's Antiochians that make music themselves, say at asleep at the wheel, or connections that we have, anything we can do to help out to enrich the experience there would be amazing. And that's an easy
One of
thing.
those guys went to Antioch.
Yeah,
Cool. I don't know.
yeah, and some
I
other
know.
folks as
I know.
well.
I know that that Yorma did,
Yep.
and that's on the short list of people to talk to. I have talked to Yorma before, and I think it would be fun. But
Jorma came and did a concert when I was running AMPAC and the theater and kind of student activities. So we had him do a concert. I was in main building at the point, but he came and did a concert back in '91, I think it was. So he's played before at Antioch. Maybe
yeah,
he's definitely older now, but hey, that's somebody we could reach out to. Ray Benson, we can reach out to. There's folks in the alumni community that know all these people as
yeah,
well.
exactly. And when you know somebody, that's how these kinds of things happen. Especially, you may notice if you look at our season, and you were to look at the dates on a calendar, you'd start to see a correlation between like Tuesdays and Thursdays. But that's what's going to work for us.
Yeah.
And Yellow Springs is such a well-positioned place. If you go to the booking agents map of North America, we could not be more well
I-70,
positioned.
yeah.
I mean, just come on, knock it out. You know what I mean? You can go from Lexington, from Louisville to Fort Wayne to Indianapolis to Detroit to Chicago to Cleveland to Pittsburgh. It's like we're right here. Yeah.
That helps a lot for sure. No, it's amazing. Well, it's been a great conversation, Chris. I know I'll be there in the Foundry Theater in a couple days for commencement. So
Fabulous.
you're off already from the year ending, but it's been great to talk. I'm sure we'll be talking more. Thanks for coming on, sharing the story for all the alums out there. We'll post some contact information as part of the online version of this. If you have ideas or want to reach out with contacts to Chris and the team at the Foundry, definitely do that. But appreciate the time, Chris, and have a great summer. And we'll look forward to the programming in the fall.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I would be glad to hear from anybody that wants to chat. I'm always open to open the doors if somebody's passing through and have a visit on site. And yeah, we'll be announcing our season late July, and it will include dates through the 25-26 season and information on those season supporter ticket packages and all else that's coming down the pike.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. And
Thanks,
everyone,
Mark. Take care, man.
yeah, bye.
Bye.
Thanks again for joining us on the Antiochian Podcast. Until next time, I'm Mark Swanholm signing off.